Alright, so part 2 of season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the cat is still being very loud. This second part really is where the best word to describe it is there's really no word to describe it now that I think about it. It really hits its stride. You know, it gets interesting, it gets fun, it gets exciting, it gets a bit suspenseful, and it starts off, obviously we end with Coulson being taken by Raina, and you know the team is now scrambling to find him, and S.H.I.E.L.D. just, Fury apparently sends almost all of S.H.I.E.L.D. to go get him, and you're kind of like, well, why? Come to find out that this clairvoyant who, you know, is supposed to be able to see everything, saw, I guess, everything leading up to this. They can see everything, but the one thing they can't see is when Coulson died, what happened to him. And the reason that I love this is because so many people give Marvel crap about this. You know, oh, nobody really dies. You know, even Coulson didn't. Well, yeah, they brought him back to life, but it's becoming a major plot point. You know, it's not just they brought him back to life, no explanation needed, we're good. No, it's a major plot point. Now the main bad guy is concerned about this. Like, they want to know how it happened. It's the one thing that this clairvoyant cannot see, and that's why they want Coulson. And like, okay, so it is important. You know, it's not just something they threw in there. And so he goes with Raina to this, it's like this nuclear town that, like in Indiana Jones, where he hides in the fridge somehow. But it was never destroyed. It was set up to be destroyed, but never was. And so they're keeping him there, and Edison Poe is like heading it up, torturing him, trying to force him to remember what happened when he went to Tahiti, which he's starting to realize there's something wrong with Tahiti. You know, he's not really sure what, but every single time somebody, how's Tahiti? It's a magical place. That's all, like, he does it every time, and he's starting to get concerned himself. Well, obviously, he doesn't crack under torture because he's Coulson, and he's awesome. So Raina, you know, steps in and says, well, you're torturing him. You're not going to get any answers this way. And the clairvoyant calls at that point and tells Raina that she can have a shot at him, and then kills Poe over the phone, which I want to know how he did that, because they never explain. He just puts the phone up to it, hello, and it just attacks his ear, and he dies. And I'm just like, how did they do that? That's crazy in and of itself. But anyway, so Raina finally kind of, instead of torturing him into it, she just convinces him, you know, don't you want to know what happened to? And she tells him a bit about himself that she shouldn't know, but the clairvoyant told her about him. And so, you know, he's kind of like, what's going on here? Finds out that Tahiti wasn't Tahiti. What he thought he remembered as him just, you know, relaxing, it was actually 2 doctors operating on him and, you know, working on his brain. And you're kind of like, what is going on? Like, this is taking a very dark turn, and that's what I love about this episode, is that kind of everything you thought you knew, it's like, no, take all that, throw it out the window. We actually have a story going on here. And I love that. I love that they're making this a part of the story. They're making it a major plot point. So at the end, of course, they rescue Coulson. Raina gets captured. But at the very end, you see Mike Peterson, and he's very distorted from the explosion, but he wakes up. He's got no leg, but he looks in the mirror, and all of a sudden the message, he's got one of the chips in his eye, and it says, wait for the orders. You're like, oh, crap. Like, you're just like, really? This sucks. This really sucks. And so, you know, that you find out a bit about what happened when Coulson died. Like, you know that something was very, like, he was begging for them to kill him. And so, you know, you're a little bit worried. You're like, what happened here? Um, and so, go on to the next episode called Seeds. And an interesting episode, but it kind of, after all that happened, it's almost like, let's take a break. That was a lot of information to take in. Things just changed, possibly forever. Let's take a break. Let's have another episode to kind of forward the plot a bit, but nothing too serious. Basically, they are, Skye, Ward, Fitz, and Simmons. They go back to the academy. May and Coulson go elsewhere. And May is kind of like, we need to take your mind off of this. We're going to go look up some information about Skye's past. Because they find out information about her, but it's not good. It's, there's a S.H.I.E.L.D. document, and basically, there's not enough information. You just know that a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent dropped her off at the orphanage where she was, she grew up. But apparently several people died in this mission, whatever it was. And so they're trying to find out information about the woman who dropped her off. She's dead now, but her partner is still alive. And so they're trying to find the partner to get information about what happened. And elsewhere, the main plot point for this episode, as far as what's going on, is Ian Quinn is back. And he's funding these two very bright students at the academy to build this kind of weather machine type thing. It's just, it creates ice pretty much. And that's all that really happens there. This isn't really a review for every episode, so if I can skip stuff, I try to. Basically, the important thing is Ian Quinn is back. You do see the kid later, though, and at the end of the episode, you can see he apparently has been affected by this ice machine, because he starts, he puts his finger along the window, and ice crystals start to form. So that's the other important thing. Other than that, it's just another case, which isn't bad. It's a very interesting case. But the really important thing is Coulson and May, and they're finding out information, and they find out from this guy that the girl that was dropped off at the orphanage, she's an 084. She was the 084 that these agents were sending there to protect, and a lot of people died trying to protect her. And you're kind of like, what? That's odd. And that's pretty much it for this episode. But it forwards the story. You're finding out a bit more about what happened with Skye and why she's important. And I think it was either the end of this one or the end of the last one. Either way, the other important thing is that Coulson confronts one of the doctors that he remembers worked on his brain and finds out some information about what happened. Finds out that the doctor didn't want to do it, that he was basically, Coulson was begging them to die, and then the doctor was pretty much saying, we don't have the right to do this. This is wrong. He is begging to die. This is not a good thing. But that's it for that one. The next one is where things step up. Really, really get going. It's called Tracks, and they're all on this train, and it's a cybertech mission because they figure out Ian Quinn is behind cybertech. And so they're trying to plant a tracker on one of the cybertech things. And the way this episode is done, first of all, is very well. All of them go through their little missions. First it starts off with Coulson. He is going towards the back car to find out what's going on because their comms are down. And then Ward comes running out the corner. He's like, "We gotta go!" Jumps off the train. And then this guy throws this grenade, and the train disappears. Like, what happened? Next, you see what happened with Ward. He disguises himself as an attendant. This woman says she needs help with her bags, so he goes inside. She's an agent working with Cybertech. So he fights off all of these people and starts running. And he's like, "We gotta go!" And then that's where they pick up. And then they go a little bit more. They find this car that's already running. And then they take it back to the bus and get a message from this agent they were supposed to be working with. that he doesn't know what happened to the train. Just they can't find it anywhere. And then he shows up at the bus, and then gets stabbed in the back, and it's May, and she's all bloodied up. You're like, what happened? Well, they go back and they show everything from May's point of view, and how she like was at the top of the train, but then somebody starts shooting at her. She jumps off, and then sees. The very interesting thing about this is seeing Coulson and Ward, and they're stunned from the grenade. It's like, oh, well, they invented something new. That's interesting. I wonder how they found that out. Find out later. It's from Fitz and Simmons' neurotoxin. And they designed a grenade. And you're like, wow, that's pretty clever. But the very interesting thing about this one is finally you learn about the story from Fitz and Skye's point of view. Simmons, she was on the train. She protected Fitz and Skye, but she got stunned by one of those grenades as well. And so Fitz and Skye go to the compound, and they go in. Well, no, Fitz is going to go disable the vehicles. Skye's like, I can't let Ian Quinn get away. So she goes inside, finds her way to the very bottom, where she finds Mike Peterson. And you're like, oh, there he is. Cybertech is behind this. What? So Cybertech and Cybertech and Centipede are working together. You're like, holy crap. Ian Quinn shows up and releases Mike from his cage and kind of like, proves his dominance over him. He's like, you can't hurt me, can you? Even if you really want to. Like, if I told you to shoot her, would you do it? And he's like, those aren't my orders. And then leaves the room. And Skye kind of follows after him. It's like, Mike, turns back. What did you do to shot? And gets shot. And you're like, wait, what? And she's kind of like stunned for a second. And she starts to fall, and he catches her. He's like, shh, shoots her again. You're like, what the hell is happening here? Like, this isn't right. You can't. What? Yes, this show has been doing this a lot. Don't judge. Bulletproof vest. No, she's bleeding. What's going on here? And this, it catches you by surprise. You're like, what? Like, she can't survive 2 shots to the gut. Like, this one's point blank. This is ridiculous. Like, she's bleeding out. And so he leaves. He's like, I have my orders too, and walks out. And Skye's fighting to hold on. And she opens the door, calling for help. And of course, Coulson and the team get there right after Mike Peterson has like killed all of these business people. He said Clairvoyant's not happy with what you've done, and they're like, don't you know who we are? And just like kills everybody in the room. And you're like, crap, like, dang. So you can tell he's clearly getting his orders from somebody, just like Aquila was. I guess the one thing that is worth mentioning, which me not being a huge comic book nerd didn't really know what this was, but I'm thinking it was a part of the comic books. They show something inside of his leg, and it says Deathlock. And I want to say he's a Marvel character, but I'm not entirely sure. But that does come back anyway, so it's worth mentioning. So he's Deathlock now. But Coulson finds Skye like barely holding on to life and calls everybody down. Simmons gets her into where Mike was being held. It's like a barometric chamber or something that can keep her stable mainly. And that's kind of where it ends, with her barely holding on. You're kind of like, this is not good. Next episode is Tahiti, and this one really, it takes what you thought was going to be meaningless and what a lot of people are making jokes about because they haven't watched this show. Coulson's death means a whole lot. more than anybody's giving it credit for. And every time somebody says something about how, oh, let's just bring Coulson back to... This show really explains that. It explains a lot of stuff. People need to watch this show. But basically, this one is about Tahiti. They've got Skye. The doctor said she's not going to make it. But Coulson has information about this facility that that he was operated on. That Fury brought him back to life, and pretty much the basic thing was he went through so much trauma that they needed to change his memory, and that's what we saw in his when they finally brought that back. The trauma was so bad they had to change his memory of it, or else he would have been permanently damaged in the brain. So they have this information, and Coulson kind of decides, look, if they can bring me back from the dead with this stuff, maybe we can save Skye. And so they start heading there and get intercepted by this other plane, and the plane just, it's kind of cool seeing the plane just land on top of the other one. You're like, S.H.I.E.L.D's so cool. But it's another agent by the name of John Garrett, played by Bill Paxton. Good old Bill. And it's interesting seeing him in the show. And then he also has like a new, I guess, what's the word? Like apprentice type thing. Because Ward was his apprentice at first, but he has a new one. His name is Triplet. Everybody calls him Trip. And so they intercept because they were told to take Quinn back to headquarters, but they need to get to this base where where Coulson was supposedly operated on, so they could they could revive her, and there's no turning around. And so basically Coulson convinces Garrett to interrogate him on the plane. And so it's just, this first part is not as interesting as the rest of the episode. Like you get Garrett kind of intimidating him into talking a bit about Centipede and Cybertech and all that stuff. And I'll reference this later because there are some things when you've watched it a second time after knowing what you know later on, it's kind of funny. But anyway, they're heading towards Bethesda, which they think is where he was operated on, and they come to find out that nothing like what Coulson went through was there. So like, well, what happened? Finally figured out that he was operated on at the secret base that's not on any S.H.I.E.L.D. registry. And so they go there, and it's guarded by two guys who are willing to die to protect what's in there. And they find this mixture. It's GH325, I think. I have a pretty good memory on like numbers and stuff. I think it's 325. Because I say numbers because I don't remember names, as you can probably tell. But anyway, so they find this mixture and they're taking it back to Skye. And as they're taking it back, Coulson sees this vault labeled Tahiti, and he tells Ward, go ahead, or no, he tells Fitz, go ahead and take that and get it to Skye. I'll be there in a second. He goes in there, and they cut to Ward, Garrett, and Fitz like getting out of the compound. Like they set up some explosives to bust open the doors, and they're escaping because the whole place is about to go up. Like there's a countdown timer to blow the whole place up. And so Fitz is taking the stuff back. Ward's heading up to check on her too. And they're like, where's Coulson? So Garrett heads back to get Coulson, and you just see Coulson walking like a zombie almost. He's just like got this like just shocked expression on his face. And so he's like, come on, Coulson, we gotta get out of here. He's like, that vial, he's like, Fitz is giving it to the girl. He's like, they can't. Well, let's go. And he's like freaking out, and so they're heading up. And just as he's getting in there, they're giving her the serum. And he's like, no, don't give it to her. But it's too late. They've already given it to her. and you see her start convulsing, and you're like, what is going on? And like, you're just like, what? And then she stops, and her vitals are all normal. And you're like, so she's alive. She's good. She's good. And you think that's the end of it. You're like, okay, so that's it. We're good. You know, she's good. Nope. Because just a few minutes later, Maze is talking to Coulson. She's like, I heard you tried to stop them from giving the serum to Skye. What did you find? And it shows him going in there into the Tahiti room. And it shows like all these vials being filled up with this blue liquid. And he opens up this thing, and there's an alien inside. And it's being drained and filling up these vials. And you're just like, holy crap! Like, just, okay, like, this is, wow. Like, that's pretty crazy. You know, just an alien, and we're using it to do stuff. So, anyway, that's where that episode ends. And it shows a preview into the next episode, which I don't know why they couldn't have just shown at the beginning of the next episode, but I guess it ties it together somehow. But it shows this woman who's dressed very medieval-like, and she comes up to this guy who his wife is inside paying, and she's talking to him a bit and, you know, convinces him to take her away. Which leads into the next episode. You find out she's Asgardian. Nice little twist. They bring Lady Sif, which, if you have seen Thor, you know who Lady Sif is. She is the alien that loves Thor, even though he would rather be with Jane. Which, come on, Thor. Which one would you? I get it's Natalie Portman, but this woman is like, she's a warrior, which is pretty awesome. And she can kick a lot of butt, and Natalie Portman can't really. So, come on. I mean, come on. Human Asgardian. Human Asgardian. Think about it, Thor. Anyway, but you see her like show up to help, and she's there to help them stop this threat. Her name's Lorelei, and she can control men, which makes me think Poison Ivy, but that's just because I'm a Batman fan. But anyway, that's pretty much her thing. Like, her voice can control most men, and if it doesn't, then her touch definitely does. So basically, she's trying to like get this army so she can rule, because that's all she wants. It's her main thing. She wants to rule. And she's been in prison for a while, but there's this neck thing that got broken that was supposed to be able to keep her from like controlling men. And so that's the basic thing for this episode. In all honesty, as far as the main story goes, the only thing it advances is that Ward and May stop sleeping together, because she controls Ward, and he confesses that there was a woman that he had feelings for, and that was on his team before her. And whenever they face off at the end, Lorelei tells May, he spoke of you, the warrior with the cold heart. But he's not the one that he had feelings for before me. And you're kind of like, okay, she's talking about Skye. I got it. Because here's the thing. At the beginning of this show, the way that Ward and Skye were acting towards each other, it felt so much like they were going to get together. You saw it from the very beginning. You're like, they're going to get together. I mean, come on. It makes so much sense. I've seen it done so many times. They're going to get together. It's so obvious. And so when May and Ward start sleeping together, you're like, okay, it's an obstacle. They'll still get together. And so whenever she says this, it's just confirmation. I'm a super genius. What up? You want me on your team, S.H.I.E.L.D? Brain power. I don't really do that very often. It just happens sometimes. But anyway, so that's basically the only thing. Obviously, in the end, they stop her. It's still a good episode, though. Good action. You get to see May and Ward fight, which is fun. And you get to mess with Fitz a little bit more. And I love his character, but sometimes it's fun just to see him like like he traps Lady Sif inside the box, and Coulson comes around the corner, and he's like, "Where's Sif?" Like, "Oh, I trapped her in there. Wouldn't want to mess with Lorelai." And Coulson's like, "Right, right," and he just like all smiles, and then later, like he's chasing Simmons, and Coulson's like, "Fitz," turns, whack, knocks him out, and then Coulson and Simmons like stand over, it's like, "Poor thing, he's always getting knocked out, isn't he?" And just, I don't know. There's some characters that are fun to pick on, and it's not that you make fun of them and you don't enjoy them. You really do enjoy Fitz's character. So, but anyway, that's pretty much all that happens as that episode goes. But then you have the next episode. It's called The End of the Beginning, and this is where things start to turn just a bit, because they're talking about Centipede again. Like, we finally found out that there's a clairvoyant, and the camera's shaking because this cat is stupid. Sorry. But, they finally found out there's this clairvoyant, and this clairvoyant obviously knows things. They know personal things. So, even though there's no record of anybody having clairvoyance, maybe this could be the first one. And so they review some of S.H.I.E.L.D's old profiles. Coulson tells Skye, go through and find out if any of these people, like, maybe they were clairvoyant, we turned them away, and maybe that's why they're attacking S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's where they're headed. Victoria Hand returns. Blake, which was, he kind of appeared for one episode. What was? Oh, the one with the Chitauri helmet, the one I was talking about in the first review. He was there. He was the agent, and he kind of told them, if there's any infected cargo, you need to dump it. So he works at the sandbox. So Garrett's there, Blake's there, Hand is there, and they're all there. They're going to take on the clairvoyant. And so Skye figures out. First of all, she gets inducted in as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. They took off her bracelet at the beginning of this second half of the season. Took it off because she proved herself trustworthy. She went outside of the system to get to Coulson. And I would have gone into a bit more detail, but I'm trying to keep this short. So how they got to him is not entirely important to the story. But anyway, but now she is officially an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And so she deduces this clever way of, kind of getting past the clairvoyance. And that is, you have two-person teams, and they're sent to these different areas, and they don't receive their, whatever it's called, they don't receive their person who they're supposed to be looking for until they get there. And so it's Ward and Tripp, which, they're both former SOs, Garrett, so, they have that in common. They're talking a bit. And, share a good moment where Tripp talks about taking out the clairvoyant, and Ward's like, we need him alive. And it's like, he killed some of my close friends. If Skye wasn't alive, trust me, you'd be thinking the same thing. So they share a moment together. May and Blake are heading to this assisted living home. Oh yeah, Ward and Tripp are heading to a prison. And then finally, Garrett and Coulson are heading, I can't remember what, they were heading to meet this like juvenile teen who she had like a super high IQ. And like almost simultaneously, everything kind of feels wrong. Ward and Tripp go inside the prison and nobody's there. May and Blake get attacked by Deathlock, and Coulson and Garrett like detour, and then they go to construction, and then all of a sudden a black car comes up behind them, and then, ooh, freaked me out. It's my brother.
Not doing what you did.
Get inside. So anyway, so they, everything goes wrong all at once, and Blake tries to fight back against Deathlock, takes a few shots at him, nothing affects him, and then takes one very clever, takes one more shot with a different mag, which turns out to be one of Fitz's tracking bullets. And so they go follow that. Blake's seriously injured, and they figure out whoever was this Thomas Nash, whoever he was, he's probably the clairvoyant. He was tested for clairvoyance, but wasn't confirmed, and then he got into an accident. Now he's in a catatonic state, so S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of dismissed him. So they track Deathlock to this compound and track him down a bit, and finally find Thomas Nash, and he's just sitting in this chair, and this computer's talking for him, talking to Coulson, talking to the rest of the team, and making threats just about the rest of the team, about Skye, about May, about Fitzsimmons, all of them. And just as he starts getting into a bit more detail, Ward shoots him, and you're just kind of like, why would he shoot? Ward, what are you doing? Like, it seems so out of character for him, and it comes as a shock. Everybody on the team is shocked, and you can tell that Coulson especially is just really disappointed in him. And you think that's the end of the episode, but it goes on a bit. Ward is being held in containment, being taken back for interrogation and to go before this board of reviews. But Skye starts to figure out that maybe Thomas Nash was not the clairvoyant, and Coulson has the same feeling. And Skye finally comes up with this theory that in the S.H.I.E.L.D. database there is all of these personnel files, and it has information about Coulson, about what the clairvoyant was saying about Coulson. And they kind of figure out together, maybe the clairvoyant is somebody in S.H.I.E.L.D. with a high level clearance. And that's kind of where the ball gets rolling. You realize, okay, now I see where this is going. And so, the one they're pointing to seems to be May. She has a secret line that she's talking on, and thinking, well, maybe somebody told Ward to shoot Thomas Nash to convince us that's who he was. And so they start talking about it, and then all of a sudden the ship turns around, and it ends with they're heading back towards S.H.I.E.L.D. May is trying to hunt down Fitz because he had cut her external line that she was making a call on, but Coulson and Skye catch up to her and kind of keep her from shooting Fitz. And that's they start heading back towards S.H.I.E.L.D. and then it shows Victoria Hand kind of at S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ, and she's like, as soon as they land, take them all out except for Coulson. You're like, what is going on here? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And the one reason I really wish I started following this show sooner is that when this episode aired later that week, Captain America: The Winter Soldier went into theaters. And that is where the next episode picks up, is that what it revealed is what you figured out that week in the show, is that Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. That Centipede, all of that stuff, it was being run by Hydra. That Hydra was secretly inside S.H.I.E.L.D., the clairvoyant was secretly inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. and planned all of this, figured out all of this stuff about people, and that's what happened. And kind of learned to figure out that May is not a part of this, that her line was to Director Fury, talking to him, spying on the team for Fury. But they kind of come to the conclusion that Victoria Hand is the clairvoyant, that she is, she's a high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. She sent drones to take out Garrett's plane, and he comes on the bus with them. And very, very good action scene, Coulson taking out the drones. And so now they're heading back to S.H.I.E.L.D. And they're trying to figure out, well, who can we trust? And they figure out a plan for when they get there. Which, going through all of that now, I kind of realized how obvious who the bad guy was. But first time going through, like, you're not entirely sure. But they get inside the headquarters, and it's Skye and Ward have gone off on their one mission, and Coulson, Garrett, Fitz, and May have gone off on a separate mission, and Simmons and Tripp are inside of HQ. And they have one scene where Hand comes in with all of these soldiers and gives Simmons and Tripp a chance to surrender to Hydra. And then Tripp like fights back, gets a guard with the knife to his throat and says, "If you take us, we're taking one of you with us." And Hand's like, "All right, you passed the test." He's like, "Oh, okay." Like that was too easy. But basically, she was giving all of these agents a chance to join Hydra to see whether or not they were loyal to S.H.I.E.L.D. And if they fought back, they were loyal. And they didn't, they said, "Sure, we'll join up," and obviously not loyal. So you figure out that she is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, but she's convinced that Coulson is a Hydra agent. And, you're kind of thinking, it's not possible. But at the same time, she has a few good points that makes it reasonably doubtful. And so Coulson and his team show up. Garrett's with them, May is with them, Fitz is with them. And they get into this one room. They take out a few of the agents, and they're looking to get things offline and kind of upload something. And they start talking about what they're going to do when they get to Victoria Hand. And Garrett's like, "Well, we obviously got to kill her." And Coulson says, "Well, no, she deserves a trial." And Garrett starts listing all the things that she's done. She had Ian Quinn shoot Skye. She did all this. And he says, obviously, a few too many things. And Coulson's like, "I never told anybody that." It's one of those where the villain says too much. And so, of course, Bill Paxton, if he's in the show, of course he's the bad guy. And find out he's the clairvoyant, and he's the one that's been feeding all the information. He's Hydra. A bunch of soldiers show up to detain them. Some of them are Hydra, and they kill the real S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. And it's a good chance for Coulson, May, and Fitz, and they step up and kind of take them all down. And Hans shows up just as they're done taking them down, and takes them into custody. And so that while that's going on, Ward and Skye are working on blowing up some of the information stuff. It's some part of the mission, but they end up in a closet where they're pretty much trapped. And Ward says, I count 12 guys. I'm gonna start fighting them. Whenever I distract them, you go. And so that's when they have their moment. They're finally together. All of that stuff, all of the stuff they're building up. You're like, okay. And then he goes out and takes them all out. Comes back with a few scratches. It's like, let's go. And so they finish their mission. And so what happens next is Garrett gets taken into custody, and I like how they did this moment where Garrett's being taken into custody and Coulson's telling Ward that Garrett is Hydra. And it's just, there's no words, there's just music being played. And so to see Ward's reaction is really like, dude, no. Like you see on his face, he doesn't believe it. Like, it can't be real. But, it is. And so the episode ends with, the Victoria Hand is taking Garrett to the icebox, or the fridge, to, put him away for good. And, Ward says, "Well, I'd like to go with you. He's my SO. I have a few questions for him myself." So, like, okay. And so they go and they take Garrett and they put him away forever, and everybody lives a happy ending. That's it. That's the end. Forever. I wish. No. Victoria Hand asked Ward if he wants to put an end to the clairvoyant. You shot the wrong clairvoyant one, you want to shoot the right one this time. Shoots the 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents instead, and then Victoria Hand, and you realize that Ward's working for Hydra too. And this is where the show just really, really got to me. And it really hit hard. I mean, it was only one season that I was with this team, but the team just, they were together so much that Ward's betrayal just really felt like a betrayal to me. You know, I'm watching, I'm like, how could you do this? And it really felt like a gut punch. And of course, you know, the next episode is Coulson and his team just looking to pick up the broken pieces of S.H.I.E.L.D. This general is looking to take in all the S.H.I.E.L.D. members and interrogate them because most of them were Hydra. And so pretty much he doesn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore. But Coulson, being a loyal S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, doesn't want to go in. He wants to pick up the broken pieces of S.H.I.E.L.D. and try to revive it. And so they escape, and as they're leaving, he finds these coordinates. He believes it's from Fury, and they find a secret base that Fury had in Alaska. And so they go there and meet what's his name, Patton Oswalt, his character, who is, you know, an agent as well, and kind of tells them, you know, that, you know, while we're here, you have to obey the rules, you have to wear the lanyards, all this stuff. And so basically, you know, it's another S.H.I.E.L.D. base, and it's a place for them to start over as S.H.I.E.L.D. And so, you know, you think, okay, I see, they're going to take the fight to Hydra now. And that's kind of what happens. The episode is kind of focused mainly on Ward and Garrett and what they do after. They go to the fridge where they, you know, S.H.I.E.L.D. keeps all of this stuff, and they kind of just tear the place apart. They release all these powerful inmates that were kept in there, which does come into play later. And they get all of this stuff that, you know, like the proton thing from the second episode that you thought got sent into the sun. No, it's still there. You know, they didn't send that to the sun. And so kind of shocking to see S.H.I.E.L.D. keeps most of this stuff. But they pretty much, they raid the fridge, and that's, you know, that's that episode. Ward has to go back with the team to get Skye to unlock this device that she has all the information on. And so, you know, it ends with him showing up at the base and kind of trying to convince them that, you know, everything's okay. You know, they put Garrett away and all is good. You know, Han got killed. I can't remember exactly the story he fed them, but basically he had to kill Garrett himself. So Garrett is dead. And that's basically where that episode ends. The next one, at first, doesn't seem that interesting, but when it really gets into it, it does. It's basically about Coulson. He talks about this woman that he had a life with before he got killed. And of course she couldn't know. And, you know, he talks about her a lot. You know, she's a cellist, all this stuff. Well, she appears in this episode. One of the inmates that escaped from this fridge has like this obsession with her, and he has the ability to drain electricity, drain power. And, you know, just by touching a man, he can kill him because he drains the life out of him. And so, you know, now that he escaped, Coulson realizes he's going to go after this woman. And so he takes a small team of Fitz, Simmons, and Tripp and goes to, you know, protect her. And of course she doesn't know he's alive, so he can't tell her that he's alive because she's trying to move on with her life. She's trying to have a better life. I really hope it ends with Coulson being able to get back together with her because they have a good story, I think. But basically, you know, obviously they stop the guy. The other thing that's happening is back at the base, May decides she's going to leave because Coulson doesn't trust her. And Ward is trying to, again, gain their trust, despite the fact that he's Hydra. And so, he's lying to them, but he's doing it. He has been trained for this his whole life to fit into this role as Grant Ward, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, this episode basically ends with Skye hacks into an NSA satellite to see where the guy that Coulson's trying to track down went. And Ward, knowing that what he did could appear on this satellite, kills Patton Oswalt's character and hides him. And Skye goes looking for him, like, where'd he go? And finds his dead body and realizes Grant, he's Hydra. Like, that's the only explanation why he would do all of this stuff. And so she, decides she's gonna play along and convinces him that the device that he needs her to hack is a location-sensitive device. If she tries to hack it from anywhere else, it won't work. So it's got to be from a certain location. So they're heading. She's like, we gotta head there to do it. And so Ward tells her that Coulson needs them to go get that device hacked. And so they leave, and she's very, very much playing along with it, just trying to convince him that she believes everything he's saying. And that leads into the next episode where the rest of the team gets back and sees that May is left, that Ward and Skye are gone, and that Koenig is nowhere to be found. And so they go looking. Simmons finds a blood trail leading to Koenig's body in the ceiling, and Fitz goes into or sees they have like these little moving things that change from night to day, and sees that it's daytime but it's still on night. And so he goes in, sees there's a screwdriver stuck in it, pulls it out, and it lifts up, and you can see scrawled on there, Ward is Hydra. And so they finally figured out that he's Hydra, that he's working for Garrett, which means Garrett's alive, Hand's most likely dead. And so, they have to figure out, what the plan is, where Skye is going, that Skye's likely stalling for time. And that, they need her alive if they want her to hack the device. So they go after her, and just, the intensity keeps building. Skye is clearly trying to play along, but is very nervous about all of this. She keeps trying to, just buy more time. Throws a few jabs near the end about, when you shot Garrett in the head, did you think about what a dirty, rotten traitor he is? And, just keeps throwing jabs at him. And all the while she's called like this emergency responder group to get Ward, and ends up escaping from him, only to be captured by Deathlock. And so, of course, Deathlock convinces her to give them the information by threatening to kill Ward, which, even though she can't stand him, she's still a good person, doesn't want somebody to die on her account, so she says she'll hack the device. And eventually the episode ends with Ward and Deathlock get the device hacked, and Coulson escapes with Skye using Lola, of course, the car, which I haven't really talked about much, but Lola is Coulson's car, and it's a cool car. It's like a spy car, pretty much. But they drive out the back of the plane, and it can fly. So that's how they escape there, and they end up at this motel where Skye has said that she planted a Trojan horse. So they do have a way to get to Hydra and find out what they're trying to do. And so that's how that episode ends. And plus, Maria Hill makes an appearance, which is nice. She leads the general to this compound, and even though she wanted them to turn themselves in, once she finds out that Ward has betrayed them and that Garrett's likely alive and that Han's probably dead, she realizes, okay, we can't stop here. And the episode ends with May had gone to find out who was behind the Tahiti project because Fury was answering from somebody else. And so she goes to Coulson's grave and finds a flash drive, plugs it into a computer and finds like the information about it. Shows it to Coulson at the end of the episode. Coulson was the one informing Fury about the project and said that it needed to be canceled, that the only way that these people that were being revived were, coming back brain damaged, and the only way to prevent that was to change their memories, which obviously is what they did. But of course for Coulson, very shocking secret to discover. But the next one, it brings back a lot of the action. It's, basically S.H.I.E.L.D. deciding we're going to go after Hydra now. And that's what happens. They split into teams with different roles. Yes. They go into cybertech to find out more about Ian Quinn and his role in this, and find out about anything to do with Deathlock. And they find out that Deathlock was, originally Garrett. That he, in fact, was the first Deathlock. That he had something built into him to keep him alive. And that's what they needed Tahiti for, because if this thing could have brought Coulson back to life, then it can revive Garrett as well, which makes sense. Now everything to do with Coulson has been linked together, which is very nice. And so, they have stolen some of those. Garrett did grab a few of those vials before he left, obviously. And they're trying to figure out what this mixture does. They're trying to mix it together, trying to figure out if anything works. And they're all different vials, and so they're trying to get it all working. So they've got that on the plane. Fitz and Simmons get onto the plane to track it because they're leaving. As Coulson, May, Tripp, Skye, they're all infiltrating this barbershop where Hydra was hiding out, pretty much. And so they get there and they try to find a computer for Skye to activate the Trojan horse she had put in. And so that's what they do. They find this computer, but just before she can do that, super soldiers come in. And that's how it ends for them. As far as Fitz and Simmons, they get on the plane and they get captured, but not before they do some damage. Fitz has this EMP that just looks like one of those prank buzzers that you put in your hand, shake somebody, gives them a shock. And so he hits the EMP right next to Garrett. And of course this Deathlock program is run on electricity. So once he hits it, he starts dying. And so they're trying to figure out what to do. They finally decide we have to use the compound. And so Raina puts the compound inside of him, and all of a sudden he's much better. He's alive again. So he looks a lot better. He's strong again, and right before they give him this, though, he tells Ward, "You have to go. You have to go get rid of Fitz and Simmons. You have to cross them off." And the very interesting thing about how this episode is done is that it shows Ward when he was young, and it shows when he first met Garrett. And as a kid, growing up Garrett was obviously very strict on him. He sent him out into the woods all alone and said, you have to survive on your own. So, seeing this, and he had a dog with him this whole time called Buddy. And it's such good symbolism in this case, because he told him, you've been accepted by S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, finally, you need to put down Buddy. This dog has been with him since he first went out into the woods alone. And he said, you have to put him down. That won't be a problem, will it? He said, no. And so he's sitting there, gun pointed at the dog, and instead fires into the air. And so the dog takes off, and he couldn't do it. And you see the comparison, because Fitz and Simmons got into this thing. It's just this little section of the ship. They get inside, and Ward can't get in. And the way they do it is so clever, because it shows him go and shoot the dog, and then he can't. He shoots up into the air. And you can see him clearly flashing back to that time. He said, Fitz is saying, look, Ward, I know you care about us. He starts to punch something into the side. And what's he doing? Ward, I know you care about us. You can't just kill us. He said, you're right, I do. It's a weakness. And it shows the crosshairs on his rifle following the dog. And you can just tell Garrett killed the dog because he couldn't. And you can see him making the connection that if he doesn't do it, Garrett likely will, and it won't be pretty. And so that section of the ship falls out and falls into the ocean. And that's how that episode ends. And then we go into the finale, and it's action-packed. It's full of a bunch of action. Love action-packed. Basically, S.H.I.E.L.D. infiltrating Hydra, infiltrating Cybertech, and you see the plan come into effect, and I love that. Let me start with Fitz and Simmons. They're down the ocean, they're down there, and it really seems like there's no way for them to survive. But then Simmons realized, wait, with the pressure, if we use the ethanol, we can burn our way out of here, create a small explosion that can open the door, that can bust it open. And the next thing that they have to do is, possibly put out a beacon, and they have to get enough oxygen. And the way it ends is Fitz tells her, this is enough oxygen for you to get one breath, and that'll give you enough air to get up to the surface. She's like, well, I can't leave you. And then he finally confesses that she's more than just a friend to him. This has been a whole season coming. And almost less than 30 seconds after he tells her, she's crying. She's like, no, you can't do. He turns and hits the button, and she just one cut off scream, no. And then you just see it explode, and you see her start to swim up to the surface with his unconscious body. And you're like, what's going on? And she emerges with Fitz at the surface, and then a helicopter comes down, and it's Director Fury, and you're like, holy crap, there he is, in the flesh. That's awesome. And he explains, that he found them because of that beacon they sent out, and that he needs to find Coulson. Elsewhere, Coulson and the team have been infiltrating the compound. And Coulson and Trip got this awesome artillery truck that he started, started blowing holes in the sides of the building and taking out guards with the missiles. And Skye and May go inside to Cybertech, where they've been controlling the super soldiers. And this is after they escaped from the super soldier compound. And so they get to where all of these techno geeks, they are controlling the soldiers, watching from the eyes of the soldiers. And so they get inside and they start they start threatening everybody in there. And the main guy is like, you can't threaten us. We'll take care of this ourselves. Only we can control them. And they put him onto default mode where they have to go defend Garrett, and that's the only thing they're allowed to do. And so, part of the plan. And so the super soldiers stop attacking Coulson and Trip, and they head back to Garrett to defend him. So mission number 1 succeeded. So Garrett sends Ward to the super soldier place at Cybertech to deal with Skye, and leads to one of my favorite lines in the first season. And Ward is talking about how she won't kill you, she doesn't have the guts, she couldn't even kill me, and she hates me. And getting closer, it's like, you don't really have a bomb. And she's like, you're right, I don't have a bomb, I have a better weapon. He's like, you want to know why? Because she slept with you, and she's pretty pissed. And May just comes out of nowhere, just hits him in the face.
He just hits him in the face.
Really? I'm right in the middle of something.
This ain't a room.
That's the room. That's
You're connected to. I gotta leave it.
Alright, get out.
Oh, tell me you're not in a room.
Anyway, so May and Ward have the final battle, the one that we've all been waiting for. We want to see them head to head. We want to see them fighting. We want to see who's going to win that fight. And so that as they're fighting, you see Skye go with the head guy of this Cybertech, corporation that's funding the super soldiers, that's controlling the super soldiers, and realize that Hydra has something on him. He finally gets his wife back. And then Skye goes into another room and finds Ace, and you realize that's been the threat that Mike's been doing this whole time. As she finds Ace, Coulson has gone inside, and obviously followed the soldiers to where Garrett is, and he goes in, takes one punch at Garrett. Garrett knocks him across the room because of this new, the new blood that was put in him, the alien blood that they gave him. And all this time it's just been spouting nonsense, some that has Ward a little bit concerned. And so, he's obviously very powerful. When Coulson looks up, there's Director Fury. And, they have a little back and forth, and gives him the gun that he used against Loki, which is very clever, by the way. He's like, yeah, I know how it works. Takes out the other super soldiers in the room, leaving only Garrett and Deathlock. And so, Fury comes around the corner, shoots him a few times, and he gets back up completely fine. And so it seems, Deathlock locks onto Fury and Coulson, and then Skye gives him a message that can only be from his son Ace, which is, and I haven't talked about this, but the one thing that they would always say to each other is, what are we, Dad? We're a team. And so she sends him that message. So he turns it on Garrett and just shoots him with a missile, and then goes and stomps his face in. And I need to talk about this because this is very important. Garrett this whole time has been spouting some nonsense that Raina was just, when she found out he wasn't really clairvoyant, she was really upset because she wanted him to be clairvoyant. She wanted him to answer some questions about herself. And so whenever he started spouting this nonsense about understanding, feeling everything, she was really happy about it. It was like she wanted him to experience this phenomenon, whatever it is. And he started drawing these weird symbols. And it's the same weird symbols that when Ward infiltrated the compound in the fourth episode with Aquila, when he went in as her, those were the same weird symbols that were being drawn. And so you see the connection, like, I remember those symbols from earlier. Okay. So it's all connecting now. And so, that's how it ends. May beats Ward, Skye gets Ace back from Mike, Mike kills Garrett, and obviously Fury and Coulson stop the whole Hydra plan, or at least Garrett's plan. Hydra's still out there, but they cut off one of the heads. And so that's it. And at least you think so. And then a few minutes later, they cut back to the compound, and you see this doctor on the floor. You see where Garrett's body just was. You see that thing opened up. You see there's like this guy in a suit dead, and he gets into this this machine that Ian Quinn had built, and it starts like it was supposed to pretty much rebuild somebody, kind of like what Deathlock is. It's just mostly machine, and so it starts putting all this stuff on him and makes him into machine. And he's like, that's why whenever you cut off one of the heads, you really need to cut it off. Now I'll be unstoppable, and then just blows up. And there's Coulson with the photon thing, the 084 from the second episode. But I knew this was lying around here somewhere. So clever, because when I first saw that, I'm like, seriously? They just left him alone. They didn't even bother to check. And this is really going to happen in this is going to be season 2, big cliffhanger. This is going to be the big thing, we're bringing him back again. And then he just blows up, and you're like, that's funny. You almost had me. Because it really almost was a cliche, and then they completely spat. Like I said, self-aware jokes. That's one of the most overused tropes that are so boring. Like, oh, the villain comes back. And this time they're just like, nah, we're just kidding. He's not coming back. So I love how they ended that. Of course, Coulson's mad at Fury about everything he did. But now Coulson's director. Skye's a part of the team. They're rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. from the bottom, according to Fury. And Fitz is alive. Simmons is at this new compound called the Playground, and you get to see Patton Oswalt again, another Koenig brother, and he's in charge of this one, same as the other Koenig brother. And that's where S.H.I.E.L.D. is now. They're fractured, but they're rebuilding. You think that's where it is. Next season's going to be all about rebuilding S.H.I.E.L.D. And then it shows Raina, and she walks into this room, and this guy's arm is like covered in blood, and that's all you see is his arm. And she's like, I found your daughter. And his arm grabs it and holds it up. It's a picture of Skye, and you're like, what? What's going on? What is this nonsense? And then they do they show the S.H.I.E.L.D. symbol that normally says, we'll be back in a second. And come back, and Coulson's like lying in bed, eyes partially open. And he stands up, and Coulson, what are you doing? And he's walking downstairs, kind of like, almost like a zombie. And he grabs a knife, starts carving in the wall, and you're like, no, this can't be happening. He's carving the same exact stuff that Garrett carved, that all those other people carved. And you realize that this stuff, whatever it is that brought him back to life, it is affecting his brain. And that's the big shocker. You're like, holy crap, he's becoming just like Garrett. What's going on? And that's how season 1 ends. I realize I've been talking for a very long time. But just to quickly review, I guess, what my opinion is. There are many, many times in this first season that this show could have gone awry. That it could have made a different decision. It wouldn't have been as good. And the show would have been much different. Like, for instance, the whole Rising Tide thing. She could have stayed a part of the Rising Tide in secret. The whole Centipede thing. It didn't have to be Hydra. It could have been a completely different organization. But no, they had it was Hydra. They tied it into the movie. I keep thinking about when Skye becomes a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. The very next episode, Skye and S.H.I.E.L.D. falls apart. It's when Hydra is revealed. And in that episode, Skye and Ward finally hook up. And then at the end of that episode, you figure out Ward's a Hydra agent. And you're just like, what is going on? Like, all of this stuff that I thought it was setting up. Skye was going to be a part of the Rising Tide for a while. Nope, only a few episodes, and then she's not a part of it anymore. They find it out, and now she can't be trusted. they've been setting up she's going to become a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. She does, just before the whole organization falls apart. They've been setting up that she and Ward are going to get together. She does. Turns out Ward's a traitor later that episode. And you're just, all of these things that you think it's setting up, you think you've got the show figured out, and they do a full 180 and say, gotcha. Like, in some shows it can get annoying, in some shows some twists just get too frustrating and too, like really, like you really had to do that, but I love the twist in the show, and it really changed the show. It started off as like a case-by-case show. You know, you have this 084, and then you have, you know, this other, you know, this scientist that gets kidnapped. Then you have this girl that is possibly psychic, and that was it, case after case after case. And then once it got going, it became about Centipede, and then it became about Hydra, then it became about stopping Hydra. And even in season 2, it changed halfway through, and I'll get to that when I review season 2. But I mean, it really, it really did hit its stride in the second half, though, when it finally got going on the whole Centipede story. And even though there were still a couple of episodes that, you know, didn't really further the story, it still was a good episode, and it still really just, it was about one of the characters, and we learned a lot about the characters, and just the fact that in one season, you know, a betrayal from one of the main characters hurt so much. It shows how well they did with their characters. And that was season 1 in a very big nutshell. I know I did a lot of recapping, but the story itself is really the main part of why I enjoyed it so much, because they did such a good job with the story and writing the story and tying it in with the movies. And that's pretty much it. It's a good show that has taken many twists and turns, and is continuing to take many twists and turns. So that's my opinion of season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And now I'm going to start binge watching season 2. So I will see you in the next review. Peace out.